It has been said that if they explain Nigeria to you and you understand, then you should know for sure that it wasn't Nigeria that was explained to you, or you've just been deceived. Such also is the claim laid by the Catholic theologian and Saint Augustine. If you should come across a comprehension for the idea of God, and then you get to really come to understand it, then you should know that indeed that was not God you got to know, and you got to know something else, invariably saying that you've been deceived. And this particular adage holds sway also for a whole lot of persons as it concerns daily realities around the world. People have come to, that particular resignation whereby they get to tell themselves that there's nothing under the earth that is new. There's no such thing as that is new under the earth. But such allusions and such conclusions given on a large scale might be contended with a thing like artificial intelligence and what we are beginning to see. So things are changing. The There's been a rise in new forms of expressions different from the old, but that is left for philosophers to get to contend about. Nigeria has remained a focus for me for quite some time now, and the reasons are not far fetched. One, I'm a Nigerian. By extension, by virtue of that reality, I'm also an African, and then I'm also a global citizen. And one cannot just sit down and look around the daily realities that get to be one's life and experiences, and then just not either say one or two things about them beyond small talks. That is what I have resigned myself to, trying to see how we could get around these conversations. And about the case of Nigeria, it remains a serious concern for me and a lifelong mission for a whole lot of persons. And you will get to see why I get to make such allusions, and why I get to make such statements and that look sentimental to a great extent. One of the reasons I get to say this is the geographical positioning of the country within the continent. The geographical expression, as many got to call the country for a very long time, and many still see the country to be, as a geographical expression, as a people never meant to be united together, as a people sold off as a trade as a trading product, by Nigersem, now known as Unilever. And you get to see a whole lot of all these issues pop up here and there, and it is important we look at how far we've come, how far things have been for us, how well we've fared, and how not so. And one of the ways we can actually measure our level of growth, if there is any, is to see our current situation, our current reality. There was a time Ethiopia was being held high as a country never colonized, as the country within the African expression that was never colonized. But in modern day, and in our times today, we get to see that both countries are in dear need of salvation and in dear need of help. And nobody is coming to save anybody anytime soon. Nobody is coming, because even we ourselves have not come to the realization that we self need helping, that we ourselves need helping, that we need to grow, that we need to succeed, that we need to look not just about our life but into the future, and get to tell ourselves that before we came, there were those we now call fathers who tried their very best. At least within the last 80 years, we've seen men and women rise up in their numbers for both good intent and ill intent and not so clear, and others with a mix of both come out to say, we need to emancipate ourselves, just like the poet, philosopher, and writer would sing. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And so, with the chant of songs like that, a luta, a luta continua, a luta continua, continua. In Zimbabwe, a luta continua, a luta continua, continua. In Nairobi, a luta continua, a luta continua, continua. We've heard people like this, give us songs, things to get to cheer us up, things to leave us gyrated. We've also heard men like Nelson Mandela said, I have fought against the black domination, I have fought against the white domination. I have tried to live my ideals in a democratic environment where all men will be treated equally, not by the color of their skin. These are mix now of Martin Luther King, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Nelson Mandela will continue, this is an ideal I hope to live for. But if needs be, it's an ideal I hope and I'm ready and willing to die for. We've seen the rise of Ojukwu. We've seen Gowon, done what he has done for the continent and particularly for the country. We've seen Obasanjo. We've seen a whole lot of persons come down our path, but we've not really had Nigerians. Nigerians had Nigerians with the willpower to contend and contest with the war powers, because like it or not, the times we live in are dangerous times. The times we live in are times full of sentiments and times full of competitions and times whereby people are highly misinformed. And so we continue to see the continent gets to dwindle, the continent gets to go down on its knee, the continent tries to make sense of itself, but the powers that be, those that really get to matter, don't really get to allow things get to flow the way they ordinarily should flow. And so Nigeria is here again trying to claim independence and trying to get to celebrate independence. But as it tries to mark that particular celebration, which it normally does on 1st October, someone like Showore is not considered a free man. Dele Farotimi is still forever considered an enemy of the state. VDM, no matter how you want to hate him, is still considered a thorn in the flesh of a whole lot of persons. Pidom is currently in detention. And a whole lot of other persons, people who've disappeared, people whom nobody have heard from. Delegiwa died. A whole lot of other persons. Ken Sarowiwa is still weeping in his grave. The Ogonis have seen a whole lot of troubles. The Ogonis have still not known justice, a thing that is lacking, but a thing we all really, really need, a thing that we all cannot do without. There's a whole lot of confusion out there as to what's the way forward for the average Nigerian. And in trying to answer this particular question, a whole lot of persons have given up in despair and then jump off one cliff or the other. Those who have the strength have stabbed themselves. Those who had what I would call cowardice have sat down with snipers and then they've despaired down that particular path. There was nothing to hold them together. And in trying to answer that particular question as to what and how far we've come, we've seen a whole lot of persons die in places not necessary. We've seen a whole lot of persons get to collapse in buildings not checked, in houses not properly built. We've seen a whole lot of persons die on roads not well built, or not even attended to at all, whereby such funds have been carted away by so-called big men and big women here and there, and the masses have been left to suffer, to wallow in their quest for salvation, in their desire to be free. But yet, how can they be free when those who drive their vehicles are not even sure of where they are going to, are not even sure of where they are heading to? So that we find DK in his poem, Fix the Politics. Nothing is as worse as a politician in high office with low mentality. Nothing. Politicians in office with mind in London, perpetual latecomers to every meeting, irritated by anyone with a different opinion, will see the people as a throne to sit on. There's a whole lot of stuff down there. There's a whole lot of problems. And how we manage to survive these issues are things I don't even get to understand. How we manage to conceal our pain, our sorrow, our sadness, our anger, our difficulties, our hardship, the torments we get to go through, how we get to do all we get to do, and how we get to do them, and when we get to do them, and how calm and quiet and content we are. It's the thing that still baffles me, because I still don't know why we have not been carried away by rage. We've not been carried away by the necessary anger that should accompany such gross ineptitude and such gross inequality, made possible by our ruling class, made possible by years squandered, as Onyeka Onwelu will get to tell us, years squandered by the locusts, years squandered by the canker worm that has eaten deep into the fabric of our daily life. So that we've seen the likes of Nuhu Ribadu in real time get to change sides and become a politician, and all of a sudden forget his course as a lawyer and forget his course as a police officer, and then also forget his course, a course that made him say, if one fights corruption, corruption fights even harder. A whole lot of things have changed in these so-called 60 plus years we've now called our years of independence. A thing that should not even be in the first place, a thing that we shouldn't even be talking about. Why should anybody want to celebrate independence in a world we live in, except to fulfill what Dostoevsky will get to tell us about the fact that man is the only animal, as natural as it is, who is out there to inflict pain and suffering on the next animal, and the next man. And that is what we've done. Year in, year out, we have come to tell ourselves that we are immortal, that we are not going to die, that things are just going to continue this way. From the likes of Gowon to Juku to Ibrahim Babangida to Yaradua to as many of our leaders who've gone before us and rulers who've passed by. Not even Sani Abacha survived the day. We have told ourselves we are so immortal, we are going nowhere. We need a secure life into our hundreds, into our 200s. And so we've seen greed taken the forefront and the hem of affairs of our country. And so we've seen tribalism get to spring up here and there. And so we've seen nepotism shone bright as bright can be, though dark in itself. We've seen the whole idea of the catchment area get to toil down on meritocracy. We've seen a whole lot of things go down. We've seen families wiped out by insurgencies. We've seen terrorism rave the country. We've seen banditry up north and insurgency down south for greed. All of these are the causes. All of these are stuff emanated from greed, are issues that we ordinarily can contend with, are issues we ordinarily can solve without anybody getting to hear us. But we've not done that. And so we've made poverty a thing possible. We've made poverty a thing the near, a thing that we now have and hold and keep and get to tell ourselves that, you know what, we are not ready. We are not ready for change. And so let's continue to suffer. Told ourselves these things over and over and over and over, and they're beginning to look like truths. They're beginning to look like truths. They are getting grips as farewell hugs, and they are changing the way we think. They are changing the way we reason. They are changing the way we get to do things. So that in the space of less than 80 years, we've come to have a great chunk of our youths become so lazy that all they could think about is money. And we've had crop of politicians become so poor that all they have is but money. Financial security here and there, but then when it matters the most, they can't get it. They can't get things like adequate healthcare system. They cannot get proper educational infrastructures that get to cater for the rich and the poor. And so what happens? Despite their money, despite whatsoever we think we've come to acquire as a people scattered across this continent, scattered across our country, we've come to see men and women with so much fear. So much fear for the next man because you who have a fence and has cars would always want to think about the man who has nothing and who needs your children as ransom so that you can also get to reimburse his coffers. And so we've seen the East, a place once vibrant, strong, tall, standing as tall as you can think of, all of a sudden collapsing under the weight of its own people, collapsing under the weight of ourselves, of the corruption that we get to see. A place like Benue State is still being under siege, and the government says no, does anything. And by the way, who is the government if not you and I? Who are those in authorities if not our brothers and sisters, our friends, our families, even ourselves? Without the desire nor the will to wield anybody out of poverty. It is ourselves. We sat down here, we've looked at ourselves, we've told ourselves too many lies. We've told ourselves that we are all fine, that we can just pray things over, that we can just pray our way out of our situation and out of our problems. But no, that is not how it happens. That is not how it functions. That is not how it goes. And so we continue to wait. We continue to wait for the coming miracles from God. We continue to wait for solutions where ordinarily they are not. We continue to create problems and think we have solutions. And so we find ourselves drowning, drowning, drowning deeper, deeper, deeper into an abyss we cannot fix for ourselves. As such, our nurses and our sons and daughters have left the shores. The sane ones have left the shores of the continent. The sane ones have left our countries. Those with little amount of money to spare here and there have left us behind because they need to survive. They need to take care of themselves. They need to grow. They need to succeed. They need to advance. They need to move on and on and on and on and on. But how does one survive in a place like Nigeria? A place with no running waters in many corners. A place with no flushing toilets. A place with no roads, no good transport system, an overbloated civil service, who barely go to work, who've declared Friday a public holiday because it's a period where Muslims get to go to the mosques. And since it is the mosques we talk about, we shouldn't talk about how things ought to be and how things ought to go. A place with no agricultural powers, a place where there is no constant power supply, a place where children still cannot completely go to school, a place where journalists are attacked, terrorists, and terrorists are called upon to dine and wine with the government. This is Nigeria. This is my country. This is your country. This is the country of your neighbors, your wife, your friends, your enemies, those you detest so much. But the West cannot really claim innocence. The West cannot claim innocence to the allegations brought forward before it. And so, as we continue to ask ourselves these questions, we ask ourselves, what role has the West played, and how have we aided them in whatever they are doing? I'll tell you for free. We've aided them by not investing in our educational system, as such, producing minds that are going to think and are going to be think tanks for the country. We have aided them in continuing their colonial agenda down our countries for a whole lot of reasons. Because of our irresponsibility, because of our lack of seriousness and commitment to the cause which is before us. And such a cause is a Nigerian cause. It's a cause meant for patriots. It's a cause meant for human beings. It's a cause that all of us should try to force and forge into a reality. But we don't. We look for our personal gains. We look at how it's going to concern our tribes. Nigeria is just like a meeting point whereby different people come to share money. So many persons have said this. This by no means is truth in as much as one gets to look at it, but that's not my stance. We aren't patriotic enough. We have not come to the realization that we as a people can do better, that we as a nation can grow and grow and grow and grow beyond our selfish interests, beyond what we now come to hold as how we ought to go and how we ought to lead ourselves. So that we've placed those who are not qualified for the job, we've placed them ahead. So that we've placed those who ordinarily have no business with government houses to be there. We've placed ministers, we've placed senators, we've placed directors of different boards and parastatals who, on the basis of merit, don't deserve such. But there are a few handful also, those who try, those who strive day in, day out to make the country better, day in, day out to see that we grow as a people, day in, day out that our country gets better. And most of the time, they are the unsung heroes. They are those nobody get to hear about. They are those who, while alive, made everybody smile, made everybody have the idea of being around. But things are changing. People are suffering. People are dying. People are dying every day in Nigeria. And until it becomes your family member, you will not know. People are dying. People are dying. People are dying, and everybody seems to be fine. Everybody just is so used to their phones now and their gadgets that almost nobody wants to really look deep into these cases. And as to why people don't even want to even look at these cases, I understand. Whistleblowers have always been called out, they have always been targeted, their families have been under attack here and there. And so I understand the trauma that comes with almost not wanting to speak up and speak out. I understand. And I tell you, it is a real thing. Being traumatized by the tortures a whole lot of persons who've tried to speak before you is a thing that really should call any thinking human to his senses to ask himself, is it really worth it? What I'm trying to do, is it really important? How should I go? How should I not go? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? I understand that we try to be very passive, that we try not to get ourselves involved and our hands dirtied and our clothes stained and traces being dragged back to us. I understand all of that. But for how long? For how long are we going to do that? For how long are we going to suffer? For how long are we going to allow our minerals taken out in large cargoes and exported back as finished product to us and make all the gains and all the profits while we continually remain in pain and in suffering? For how long are we going to continue on this path? And in all of this, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is very simple, though difficult to get to practice in respect to the way we've come to look at ourselves. What I'm saying is, we're in a very, very difficult and messy situation. And until we begin to look at our lives one after the other, one by one, I doubt we're going to make any progress anytime soon. I doubt we're going to make progress in the right direction. It's just not going to happen anytime soon until we begin to channel our energy to our right enemies, the enemies we either voted to power or allowed to get to stay there. Because if you check the whole stuff critically, you see that we are the people who don't have roots. We are the people who don't have means of livelihood and ways to sustain ourselves, and we are the ones who live in multi-dimensional poverty while our oppressors walk around and flaunt cash they never ordinarily imagine in their lifetime that they will come to achieve, from being probably councillors to becoming commissioners, moving to becoming ministers, down to becoming senators, governors, and even presidents and other directors of different parastatals across the country. You get to see that these guys become unnecessarily rich, world without enterprise, and you get to see them launder money from one business deal to the other, trying to get to clear and clean up their dirty money, and then they start millions of naira in houses, and this money don't go into the system. It doesn't circulate. It's just stagnating in a particular building, and the people are suffering. And if you think they are going to change their mind anytime soon, I think you should have a rethink of what you hold of the current crop of political guys. They've killed God. God has bled under their knife, and what they are left with is just a debasing level of secularism and a complete denial of the metaphysical and a complete denial of metaphysics and all that, and them just believing that we are just like, we're organic beings. After here, we are heading nowhere. We never came from anywhere. We are going nowhere. And with such a thinking, with such suspension of the possibility of metaphysics and all that, you find you find you find men and women in a political climate trying to appease themselves to the best of one's knowledge, to the best of one's imagining, to the best of one thinking. And in trying to do that, they get to subjugate the needs of the greater majority as opposed to the major minority. And it just speaks the devil, but it's a reality we all have to come to terms with, the fact that we are not getting out of this situation and nobody is coming to save us. And so when the next election comes and then you are being told by your inner voice that elections don't matter, because probably she has been voting for as long as you can imagine, and she has not gotten any headway with her political choices. I beseech you to not give up, to continue to cast your vote rightly and believe, not from a religious sense, but even from a religious sense, believe that one day, not just your own art or not just your own stuff will be acknowledged, and the right of the person you want to become whatsoever leader and in whatsoever capacity you are voting in becomes what they want to be and achieve their success in truth. But that you too one day would come to, get fulfillment in your life, because you would come to have known that you did the right thing and that was the right way to go. And so as we continue to dabble into the different things that make a country, I struggle to like pin one particular thing where we can take and hold and say, this is this. Going forward, we must tell ourselves the truth. Nobody is coming to save us. And as such, we must begin to do everything in our power necessary to see to it that we get things right, to see to it that we don't just waste our life and wallow our life in despondency and in careless talks and in cheap gossip. And that we join forces with as many well-meaning Africans out there from different fronts who really want to see the emancipation of the continent. And in relation to Nigeria being the largest black nation on earth. So we must try, because there are kids dying in hospitals, there are kids dying in different places, and nobody seems to really care. Nobody seems to, especially when it doesn't favor the party involved. Nobody really cares. But for how long are we going to continue to deceive ourselves and tell ourselves those lies? Because indeed it matters. It matters how we think, it matters how we feel, it matters what we do and how we get to do them. We must strive to better our future, better our lives, better our continent, or we resign ourselves to chance and to all to all there is down that particular line. When we want to elect leaders, we must think carefully, we must look deeper, we must search our souls, we must search our minds and ask ourselves, beyond my political benefit, beyond whatsoever, do I think a way forward can be a way forward? We have a long way to go. We do have a long way to go, and the right time to start is now. I am Biringkpa in America, and this is Boring Conversations.